Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jo Davidge, and I'm the Executive Director here at the Georgia Center for the Book. And on behalf of the Georgia Center for the Book, the AJC Decatur Book Festival, welcome to our fourth event in the Joshilyn Jackson Summer Reading Series. We are so very pleased to present this series to you virtually once again, in the hopes that we will soon return to doing these events live and in person, where you can meet the authors and, of course, have books signed. We do have 5 more events in this series, continuing all the way through the end of June, and featuring authors like Nancy Johnson, Neale, Jennifer Saint, Kelly Quinlan, and Caitlin Greenridge. If you'd like to find out more about this series, please visit the AJC Decatur Book Festival website, where you can find a complete list of events and register through Eventbrite. Also, if you've missed any of the previous events and would like to see them, I encourage you to go to the Georgia Center for the Book or the AJC Decatur Book Festival YouTube channels, where you can find a playlist specifically for the Joshilyn Jackson Summer Read Series. And don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell. That way, when we post new events, you can be updated to those immediately. I would also like to thank Joy Pope from the AJC Decatur Book Festival for allowing us to join in this series and bringing it to you virtually. The Decatur Book Festival has always been a wonderful event held in Decatur every year, and we've truly missed it due to the pandemic. But we'd like to remind you that we do hope the Decatur Book Festival is going to come back as an in-person event very soon, and they need your support. So do remember to donate to the Decatur Book Festival if you can, and we greatly appreciate that. We also like to thank our hosts, the DeKalb County Public Library and the DeKalb Library Foundation, who are paying for the Zoom count that we're using for these events, and all of the Georgia Center for the Book events. I would also encourage you, no matter where you are, to support your local public libraries. They've done so much during the pandemic and continue to do so much to foster reading and literacy throughout our great state and throughout the country. If you'd like to purchase copies of the book, we've put links in the chat section, and our bookseller this evening is Little Shop of Stories, an independent bookstore in Decatur, Georgia. I would also encourage you very strongly to support all of our independent bookstores across the United States. They've done so much during the pandemic to mail books to homes, to provide curbside pickup, to even deliver books to doorsteps. They've been truly innovative, and they truly deserve our support. I would also encourage you to patronize Black-owned businesses and Black-owned independent bookstores, because if we truly want a just nation and a diverse literary community, they need our support as well. Just a few reminders also that if you would like to ask questions this evening, please feel free to use the Q&A feature that you will find either at the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on the device. And we are also offering live transcriptions. So please feel free to click on the closed caption button that you will find on your screen for that. Once again, I would like to thank you for allowing us into your homes this evening, and thank Joshilyn Jackson and Nikki Salcedo for being the great co-hosts of this series this year. Right now, I would like to introduce our guest this evening, and then we will get the program started. Rochelle Alers is the best-selling author of over 80 novels with nearly 2 million copies in print, and has been hailed by readers and booksellers alike as one of today's most prolific and popular African-American authors of romance and women's fiction. She is a recipient of numerous awards, including the Emma Award, the Vivian Stephens Award for Excellence in Romance Writing, the RT Career Achievement Award, and the Zora Neale Hurston Literary Award. She is a member of the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, the Iota Theta chapter, and her interests include gourmet cooking and traveling. She is now a full-time writer, and she lives in a hamlet on Long Island. So from the Empire State of the North to the Empire State of the South, we welcome Mary Kay Andrews, a perennial favorite of Georgia readers and beach readers around our country. She is, of course, the New York Times bestselling author of 27 novels, including Hello Summer, Sunset Beach, The Weekenders, Beach Town, Fixer Upper, and she just may have a little bit of a YouTube, Facebook channel thing going on about a house restoration, about the same thing, Deep Dish, and Blue Christmas. She's a native of St. Petersburg, Florida, and she earned her Bachelor's of the Arts in Journalism from the University of Georgia. And after a 14-year career of working as a reporter newspapers such as the Savannah Morning News, the Marietta Journal, the Atlanta Journal Constitution, where she spent her final 10 years of her career. She left journalism in 1991 to write fiction. Her first novel, Every Crooked Nanny, was published in 1992 by HarperCollins, and she went on to write 10 critically acclaimed mysteries under her real name, Kathy Hogan Trocheck. In 2002, she assumed the pen name Mary Kay Andrews with the publication of Savannah Blues. In 2006, Hissy Fit became her first New York Times bestseller, followed by 12 more New York Times, USA Today, and Publishers Weekly bestsellers. She and her family divide their time between Atlanta and Tybee Island, Georgia, where they cook up new recipes in 2 restored beach homes, the Breeze Inn and Ebbtide, both named after fictional places in Mary Kay's novels, and both available to rent through Tybee Vacation Rentals. In between cooking, spoiling her grandkids, and plotting her next novel, Mary Kay is an intrepid treasure hunter whose favorite pastime is junking and fixing up old houses. And yes, I may or may not have caught Mary Kay at an estate sale that I was also at once or twice. Now I would like to turn this over to our host, Joshilyn Jackson, who is the New York Times best-selling author of Gods in Alabama and Mother May I, and all of those other novels in between, no pun intended. Will you please join me to welcome the multi-talented and ever wonderful Joshilyn Jackson.
Okay, that was pretty good, Joe. In between. I see what you did there. Hey, I'm so excited to be back here with the Joshilyn Jackson Reads series. It is just now about to be June, which means we are staring down the delicious barrel of beach time, beach reads, pool reads, park reads, outside, iced coffee drink, glass of wine, both. Why not both? And a great story that will leave you feeling uplifted and entertained, and that will be exciting all the way through. And we have 2 of the, look, I went the right way. We have 2 of them we're going to talk about today. I'm really excited. So the first thing I'm going to ask you, Rochelle, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about the Beach House. For people who are new to your work, what's the Beach House about?
Well, the Beach House is really about 3 women, 3 strange women of a certain age bonding. Because when I go to talk at book clubs or I'm at a conference, I usually ask them, what do you want to read? And most of the women who have been reading romances for like 30 years, sometimes even 40 years, they said, we want to see people that are our age, that look like us. Some of us who are empty nesters, some of us who've been divorced, some of us who've never married. We are entitled to a happily ever after. So I decided, to set this book on a fictional island in North Carolina off the coast. And the first book, the woman actually comes from Coates Island, and she goes back to help her brother run the family-owned restaurant after her divorce to a prominent Atlanta physician. And that summer, 2 other women come down to vacation. One is Leah, who is the heroine of the Beach House, but you see her in the Seaside Cafe, and you really don't know that much about her. You think she's snobbish and she's wealthy, but it's like all that glitters isn't gold. And then you really get to see a lot of who she is, how she met her husband, and how she decides after 28 years of marriage, enough is enough.
I want to say this was my first introduction to you, and you don't have to have read the first one to get this one right now. Like, I read this, now I'm going to go back and read the first one. Mm-hmm. Leah I like that she is a person who might be a little bit close to my age. I can neither confirm nor deny. Okay. And that she's in a unhappily ever now, mm-hmm. very unhappily ever now. Mm-hmm. And there is a very strong romance in this book, and that she's still this vital person who can feel all those things. And I loved it. Mary Kay, why don't you tell us a little bit about the newcomer, which I don't know, it's dumb. Maybe I feel this way every year and I just forget, but I think this is one of my favorites of yours. I loved the newcomer. I love Letty. And I loved the cast at the hotel, but you tell us about the book.
Well, thanks, Joshilyn. A newcomer, Letty Carnahan, arrives in the parking lot of this vintage mom and pop Florida motel. It's called the Murmuring Surf. She pulls into the parking lot right at sunup, and she's been driving all night. She's exhausted and she's terrified, and she has a 4-year-old sleeping in the back seat. And stuff happens. She's running away. She's terrified. She's just like 72 hours earlier discovered her younger sister's body on the floor of her Manhattan townhouse. And her sister Tanya's 4-year-old daughter is standing at the top of the stairs crying. And so Letty, the first thing she thinks about is the promise that her sister extracted from her. Tanya, who is a complicated person with a backstory.
Complicated.
She has more issues than National Geographic.
She's complicated.
Complicated.
That's so nice. That's such a nice, that's not my word for her, but she's true.
A liar.
A little bit.
She's a liar and a little bit of a con artist. But Tanya has gone through a very contentious, bitter custody battle with her ex, who happens also to be Letty's ex-boyfriend, for over custody of Maya, the 4-year-old. And so Tanya, who is a drama queen, among other things, has always said to Letty recently, if anything bad happens to me, it's Evan, the ex. Promise me, if something happens to me, you will grab Maya and you will run away. And so that is what Letty does. And she, for reasons we'll find out, end up in the parking lot of this mom and pop motel on the real beach at Treasure Island, Florida. And that, not coincidentally, is a beach right outside my hometown of St. Pete. So there's mystery, there's some romance, there's the Murmuring Surf, the name of the motel, is home to this eclectic cast of regulars, and they are mostly retirees and snowbirds who come down to the Murmuring Surf every year for the winter season. And they are very territorial and they are very suspicious and hostile towards this newcomer and the little 4-year-old that she's brought with her.
And if you don't want to adopt the Feldmans by the end of this book, I can't help you. Okay. So I have so many questions, Rochelle and Mary Kay, for you, but I want to talk to all our friends who are here tonight with us and say, this is going to be a lot more fun conversation if it's not just the three of us, and we want to invite you to be part of it. If you look down at the bottom of your screen, you see a little button that says Q&A. And if you have questions for either one of these great writers or both, just go ahead and put that in the Q&A. I'm going to talk to them for just a little bit, and then we'll check that. And we want to talk about what you want to talk about. We're here for you. So don't be shy. It's more fun when we have more voices involved. You can also put them in the chat if you want to, and I can find them, but you have a better chance of getting your question to these two writers if you put them in the thing. I also want to say that if you are getting ready to head for a weekend at the pool or your beach week, both of these books on this side of me are available through Little Shop of Stories, which is a wonderful independent bookstore. It's so, I could, like, from my house, I could spit and hit it. I never would, but I could. And I love it. It's a place I shop all the time. In fact, this is my new book, and it's in here. Like, I put Little Shop of Stories into my new book. I love this store so much. And we want them to get through the pandemic. So get your beach reads now through Little Shop of Stories. Okay. So one thing that both of these books have in common is that there are female friendships that sustain the main character and that are really central to the book. And I loved both of them. Rochelle, in your book, it really is her book club that I know is the thread that runs through. I'm assuming this is going to be a trilogy, yes?
Yes,
And so
definitely.
we will get the third story maybe next year.
Yeah.
So, and in your book, Mary Kay, it's Ava, right? I mean, that friendship where it's almost a little bit, there's a little bit of maternalness there too, but it really is a friendship. Talk to me a little bit about both of you, why that's there, what matters to you about that, why these relationships are special. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Silence.
Crickets. Okay.
You can go first.
Oh, I was going to say, you're AH and I'm AN. So I think you should go first, Rochelle, because you're a.
Okay, I'm going to say, I'll do it from now on. I should have just done that. But Rochelle went first last time, Mary Kay. So now you're up. You're in the hot seat.
Okay. Well, the thing is, I just feel that very rarely do women continue friendships beyond maybe high school or college. And I have a friend that I met when I was 7 and she was 6. She is a great grandmother. I am a grandmother. And we've been friends for years, okay? For a lifetime. And I just feel that so many times women lose friendship over, because if a woman's married, her friends are usually her husband's friends. And when they divorce, his friends are no longer her friends. And, but I just wanted to write a book where women are strangers. And the common thread in this series is that they all love books. And what I liked was the fact that I was able to highlight my favorite books.
I loved that aspect of
So
it. They were real, like you can look them up.
Yeah, I mean, it was Pride and Prejudice. It was Octavia Butler's, oh my God, why am I blanking? It'll come back to me. And you know what? Each one of them had selected a book. Was it Kindred? It
was Kindred, which my classics book club read Kindred last year.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's an amazing book.
Amazing. And each one of them came at the book from a different angle. And what was the third? I can't remember the third book.
It was right at the very end of the book. It's like on the last few pages. I could look it up. I'll look it up in a minute.
Oh no, I know for the Beach House, I know because the third woman did not come down till late. Because in the second book, they were assigned their books, but I really wanted to focus on her life. And then on the third book, they're all together at the same time because I had to bring Leah down to actually live on the island. So we're just waiting for Cherie, but Cherie has a life-altering life change all herself. So she's coming down. So in this book, in the third book, which is I think called Along the Shore, there'll be a lot more book club meetings. And the thing is, they bond over books, but you know what? It's just like, it's almost like a therapy session for them. Because, someone will come up with a question or a statement, and then, they're sort of analyzing each other. And, I know Cherie has a lot of problems. Number one, she's younger than the other two women. And her whole idea of life is very, very different from theirs. But she has to have like an epiphany to realize her fantasy is not reality. So, but I like the fact that, I have two women in their 40s and then one woman in her 30s. So you will see the actual growth of the maturity of that 30-year-old woman when she is interacting with the 40-year-old. But I also did the same thing when I did the Innkeeper series for Kensington. It was the inheritance, it was room service, it was breakfast in bed, and then the bridal suite. It was 4 women different racial backgrounds, different ages, different socioeconomics. And, you know, to say that they're different, but yet they're so very, I'm not saying they're that, you know, it's not different.
There's a little bit of a, in some ways there's a mentoring thing going on where when you are weak, your friend is strong.
Yeah.
And that was the thread that really connected it to the newcomer for me, because when Letty, Ava is a person who, she likes strays. She maybe has, she's smart, but she definitely has a bigger heart. She has more heart than judgment, we'll just say. And that's a very mentoring relationship, I think, too. Talk to me a little bit about Ava.
Well, I didn't expect Ava to be the character that she was. Once Letty pulls into that parking lot and she's confronted with this very suspicious cop, really all Letty wants to do is get a room in this motel. And you know, she's seeking shelter, and the cop is in her way. And then Ava, who happens to be the cop's mom, Joe the cop's mom and the owner of the motel, she comes out and actually Letty says, look, I don't have time to argue with you, and this is a woman thing, we need to pee. And so, you know, she takes Maya, the little girl, into the office, and Ava's suspicious, but when she sees that little girl and she recognizes she is suspicious, she knows there's something up. But, you know, I think women can tell. And Ava, the first thing she thinks of, oh my God, this poor little girl, take her in there and pee and let her pee, and then we'll talk about it. So yeah, Ava's a person who has a bigger heart than she probably should. And but I think that's a good thing.
Not for nothing, she also has a super hot cop son. Just saying. Just putting that out there. I like Joe. Okay. So we have a question from the question and answer thing, but I think it's a good question because I think that one of the charms of summer reading is setting and location. And Sharon says, when you describe the beach in your books, how, and Mary Kay, you start this time. When you describe the beach in your books, how do you come up with new ways to whisk us to the same setting so that it always feels fresh, but we feel like we're there? Sharon says she rereads books she lives in Minnesota winters. She likes to reread beach books to just, well, she's suffering. Oh, Sharon.
Well, every beach is different. And so the Gulf beaches that I grew up in are white and very white sand and lots of shelves and turquoise water. And so I put myself physically in that spot. I go there and I kind of embed like I'm in the military, and I put my toes in that sand. And what do my toes feel? Well, on Treasure Island, when I dig my toes in that sand, coquinas kind of dig up against my toes. Jocelyn knows what a coquina feels like against her toes.
I know. I do not know what a coquina is. I know it's a cottage, but is it the little mussel?
It's a little tiny mollusk, if you will.
Oh, I do know those, and they're very pale colors, like Easter egg colors.
Yeah, they're pastel colors, and they dig into the sand, and so
I know them.
Yeah, I grew up with them, and so
me too. But we just call them Easter egg clams.
No, they're T90.
Yeah, they're little, and they're like pale yellow and pale blue and pale purple. I know what they feel like on my feet, but I never knew the scientific. I didn't know they were coquinas. I didn't know what your cottage was named after. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I think I want to put my reader, I want to put them physically in that setting. So if it's a setting on the East Coast, on the Atlantic coast, whole different thing. Mm-hmm. The sand is gray. It's grainier.
Yes.
The water is a different color. There are, on the Atlantic side where I am, on Tybee Island, there are big dunes that don't exist on the Florida Gulf Coast, West Coast that I'm familiar with. So I want to be real specific. I want my reader to smell the salt air. I want them to smell the jasmine that's, winding around the columns of a beach house. I want them to hear the rustle of palm fronds against a screen, a window screen. That's important to me.
And you move around, so you're going to all these different beaches that are very, very specific. I grew up on where this book is. I grew up on the Redneck Riviera in Florida. But Rochelle, your challenge is that on all three of these books, they're on the same fictitious beach.
Yes.
So how are you creating that setting? Are you drawing from beaches that you knew, or do you talk about that? Talk about your setting a little bit.
Okay, now Mary is right about the beaches on the Atlantic side, because I'm close to Jones Beach, which is a state beach. I don't go that often because the sand is so abrasive. It's horrible. The ocean is gray, the waves are cold, and they'll pull you under. So I'm not that much of a beach person for this area, but if I go down to the Caribbean, the sand is soft, the water is blue and green, you can just float, and you don't have to worry about the surf that much. So, but I decided to do a fictional island and then give it a little bit of a history, because I love history. I started out as a history major in college, and then, after 32 credits, I flipped over to psychology and sociology. So, but I've always got to put a little history in there. So the fact that it is in the South, and these are African Americans, so I wanted to include that they have a generational history. It goes all the way back. And the owners of the Seaside Cafe were descendants of free people of color. So because there are a lot of families that were free people of color. Not everybody were slaves.
Right.
So, and that's one thing I wanted to include in the story. But the fact that, the island becomes a character in and of itself. So, and like they have some communities here on Long Island where you can't bring cars. The cars have to park at a certain point, and then you have a bike or a jitney, and that's it. And so that's why I included, the part of some communities on Long Island in the story. So that, and then they had it where if you were a resident, you can drive on the roads, but if you're not a resident, you have to get a sticker, and either you're on foot, you're on a bike, or you're on a jitney, because they don't want the erosion on the beach, because when we had Hurricane Sandy, it was disastrous.
Yeah.
So, I was drawing on that for Coates Island.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, we are. Oh, Joe is like, jitney, Rochelle is going to confuse all of us in the South. We do have a lot of Southerners here. You probably need to. I've been on the jitney. You probably need to explain the jitney for.
A jitney is like a oversized all-terrain vehicle. Okay, it's like a little that's open on the sides, and you can fit 12 people in it. That's a little jitney, and it's not heavy, so it's not going to erode the roads, because they have a weight requirement. Buses or trucks can't come down this road because it kills the roadway. So that's why I'm sure in a lot of beach towns they do have jitneys.
One of the things I like about both these books is that they really are working in cross-genre ways. And Mary, we'll start with you, Mary Kay, on this. I think this is something you do really, really well. And this is, maybe I just think that because it's my jam, but I like there to be, I need a body, I need a murder mystery. I love that. You always have one of those, and you have these characters who are, it reads like women's fiction in that you have these characters that are really facing actual serious problems, you know, that are life transition things, but you're also kind of famous for your humor, which you do, like you toe this really good line where, yes, the situation the main character is in is dire. Her sister is dead. She's a little bit a suspect in her own sister's death, which was not like peaceful old age kind of death. This is not a good thing. She's trying to solve that. She's mourning. She has this child who's lost her mother. There's these really serious themes going on, but you lighten that with a wonderful sense of humor that you get from your surrounding cast. You always have this sort of Broadway cast of thousands of all these quirky, interesting characters, and so much humor and levity and delight comes out of this. And this is one of my favorite casts, especially some of the criminals. I'm just gonna say Benjamin Dover. You guys think about that. And there's also, if you've been to high school, you know what I'm saying. And also the cast of these retirees who are regulars at this beach house. Can you talk a little bit about straddling genres and these mixed tones where you can do a funny beach read that's also a murder mystery that's also women's fiction?
Well, if I had to think about how to do it, I wouldn't know how to do it. I mean, funny isn't part of my DNA. I can't not be funny, even in the worst situations. The darkest, bleakest situations, there's always a crack and something funny comes through. And, you know, I can either fight that or I can use it. And so I made my bones in the business writing category mystery when I started out. So I wrote 10 mysteries. They were called mysteries. They were marketed to mysteries. And then I wrote a book called Savannah Blues, and that was sort of a departure. It was women's fiction. And then sort of a few years ago, my editor kind of said in an offhand way, and if you want, you could throw in a body. And because for a while I was like, what, how do I write a book without a body? If there's no body, what else happens? So I was happy to return to finding a body in the books. And I like that. I like having my protagonist have something to solve. I like her life has to be in total upheaval. She has to figure things out for herself. There's no white knight riding up to save her. In fact, in The Newcomer, Joe the cop tries to save her, and she will not be saved.
Good for her. Good for her. I like that about her. She can manage it. She can do it her own damn self. Rochelle, you, in the same way that Mary Kay's roots go back into genre mystery, you started out in genre romance. And I would say this is solidly women's fiction, but you can definitely see your romance novelist roots in there. The love story is I feel really central and really well done. And also you have you're doing the same thing in women's fiction that women's fiction does, which is look at really serious issues facing women's lives. For example, sometimes like Leah's dealing with, excuse my language, grown-ass children who some of them are not behaving perfectly, let's just say. So like real world challenges that women's fiction looks at. Why don't you talk about how you straddle that divide and what's important to you? And
well, you know what I try to do is create women whose lives are not quote unquote perfect, and they deal with it, because a lot of us, we just roll with the punches and we deal with it until it reaches a point where we're saying no more and enough. And I'm not relying on someone else to solve their problems. They're going to have to face it and solve their own. Whereas, with Leah, she was in denial from the very, very beginning. And, but, I even when she was young and she married this man who was so much older than she was still strong. You saw a thread where she had a little bit of a backbone because her mother-in-law just took over. And because she was young and she just felt, it's
And
gonna
there's some socioeconomic disparity too.
a lot.
Yeah.
And I wanted to cover that because that happens with a lot of women. And they see a guy who has a lot of money or he has some status and they think, oh, they're social climbers, really. And not realizing sometimes you pay the price. And that's what Leah did. I mean, she had her children and she loved her children. But what bothered me with her, she used her adult kids as an excuse.
Yeah.
And because, even in the first book, she says, my boys, they're in their 20s. They're not boys, they're men, okay?
Well, they ought to be.
And then she's saying that, her sons adored her husband, which they did. But what she did, she was living a double life. And what she should have done was just come out with it. They were mature enough to realize, mom's not happy. And they thought, the mother and father hadn't been sleeping together in over 10 years. And then they said, because daddy snored. And it was
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, but he was snoring 18 years before they went to college.
Yeah, it's never hashtag it's never snoring.
No.
That's not the problem. It's not the problem.
But what I liked about it that she faced her own problems and she solved her own problem. I mean,
and both of these books are that way. These are about women who act and don't react. These are about women who make decisions and do things and who don't sit in the tower braiding their long braid and hoping a prince will climb up and solve it soon. Because I think that's one of the best hallmarks of women's fiction that there is that it lets women be the protagonist. And I think it's tragic and hilarious that we call that women's fiction, because why would a man be interested in reading a book where a woman has agency? Okay. Nikki Salcedo has shown up. This is my co-host and my fellow Decatur writer, also a romance writer. Nikki says, thank you both for being here and giving us books to make us happy. I'm going to let you guys think about this for just a second. 2002 was an interesting year. Do you think that coming through the pandemic changed your writing? And did it change the books you were writing during this time, particularly, or your writing in general? Think about that for 1 second while I tell everybody here, and Rochelle, we'll start with you when we get back. You can get these books to liven up your summer, since we're now going outside again. It's a whole big thing. At Little Shop of Stories. And I want to encourage you to support your independent bookstore and go ahead and order that. You can see in the chat, there are links to where you can buy the books. And so we get to do these kind of programs and bring these great authors to you because Decatur Book Fest, Georgia Center for the Book, and our local independent bookstores. And when we do these events, if you guys don't buy the books, I mean, don't do the thing where you come to the event and then you're like, oh, I can just click on it for Amazon. You're supporting Georgia Center for the Book, the Decatur Book Fest, and your local indie, and allowing us to have events like this where authors will come. So go ahead and click that. Also, if you're just sitting around in your house with your giant room full of money going, what am I going to do with all this money? You can get your money shovel and just scoop some toward Decatur Book Festival, or just buy more books. But it's a wonderful thing. We're hoping to be back in person, and some in-person events are starting this year at First Decatur Baptist Church through DBF. So go ahead and let's support that and keep this literary stuff going.
Hey, Jocelyn, can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, shoot, yeah.
Little Shop of Stories, our bookseller tonight, is also my neighborhood bookseller. So I wanted to say that if somebody wanted to get a book personalized, signed and personalized, my plan is to stop by there tomorrow with my grandchildren who are big Little Shop shoppers. And so if somebody wanted a book signed and personalized, they can email through the link and let Little Shop know how they want a book signed.
Yeah, and if that's complicated and you can't find the thing, just call them. I call them all the time and say, this is the book I need. And they will just have it ready for you, and Mary Kay will go by and sign it. So Rochelle, talk about writing in a pandemic, going to a fictional world that is beautiful and great when you're living in a world where it's hard to leave your house without a mask. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, you know what? Initially, it wasn't too bad because I hibernate in the winter. I'm a full-time writer, and I hate to go out when it's cold. But when it started to get a little bit warmer, it got to me. The thing is, my car sat in the driveway from March through August. Of course, it died, but I kind of have seasonal affect disorder. So when it's cold and dark, I'm not really that creative. But once the days are longer, the sun is out, I can look out my window, I become more creative. But unfortunately, I did have a case of COVID and I didn't know it. I wasn't feeling very well. I had chills and, I'd go to bed a little bit earlier than I normally would. And I just thought it was just seasonal allergies until I finally got an appointment with my doctor, and I went and they did a blood test and they said, you have monoclonal antibodies, you had COVID. And I said, oh. So I did go and get my shot. The first one wasn't too bad. The second one just laid me flat and I'm still recovering from it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, it wasn't, the vaccine took me down, but you know what? But I'm just really getting over it. So it's just that it bothers me that I can't get out when it's warm. And when it's warm, I'm able to, I'm more of a voyeur. I listen to people, I talk to everybody. And
so it isn't just about beach reads, you're a beach writer.
Yes.
Like it's just really in your nature.
Yes.
Mary Kay, what about you?
Maybe because I was born in August, that had something to do with it.
Yeah, well, I'm a July birthday, Rochelle, so I have it. I'm a Leo.
Me too.
Yeah, well, that explains a lot.
Yes.
Bunch of lions up in here.
Yeah.
I'm a Pisces. Check. Check, please.
That makes sense, knowing you as I do, Joshilyn. I had started writing The Newcomer, and I went down to the beach at St. Pete in January, thank God, to do some research and to talk to the owners of old time mom and pop motels who lived on site and managed these old hotels. And I did that in January. And then, when everything shut down, I was getting ready last March. I had a 6-week book tour planned for last year's book, which was Hello Summer. And so that the plug was pulled on that. And so 4 other writer friends, Joshilyn knows this. We started this thing called Friends in Fiction. It's a Wednesday night live to Facebook webcast. We talk about books, we talk about stories, we have guest authors. But a side effect of that was we started doing these 7 a.m. Writing sprints because there was nothing else to do. So every night I would put my laptop on my nightstand, and in the morning at 7 o'clock, I would grab my laptop still in bed, and I would text everybody on the text chain, who's up, who's writing, what's your word goal for the day, how many pages are you writing, what scene are you writing? And because there was accountability, we all 5 of us got the work done. And in fact, for the first time in my 30-year career, I turned in a book early.
And wrote an extra book.
I did.
Secretly. Y'all need to.
And some people had affairs, and some people started online gambling or watching. There was nothing else to do, so I just wrote another book.
Good for you. That's a very healthy choice. A healthy choice. I gained
a lot of weight because I didn't get out of bed.
Yeah, you and me both, man.
I just ate carbs and drank wine and wrote.
Yeah, I didn't even write. I just drank beer and ate carbs. Drank and ate carbs. So yeah, I mean, I did, but I didn't write an extra book. Okay, so you both have been very commercially successful writers who are full-time writers, and you've both been very prolific, and you both have pretty dedicated following of readers, which is a wonderful thing to be in. But there's like a lot of components to that. First of all, you have to just have the thing where God touches your brain and you can do the thing. And then you have to have a really good work ethic where you can hit deadlines. And then you have to freaking love it. And then you have to have a little bit of luck. And then you have to, and then the last thing that you have to do, I forgot it. And it was such a good question. I was so interested in hearing answer this. Where did it go? God, my brain. We started talking about carbs, and now I'm thinking about my jeans that I don't fit in anymore. Oh, and you also have to be a person who's willing to do promotion. So I want you to think about some of the weirdest things. Rochelle, you think about the weirdest thing you've done to get your book into the hands of readers. Mary Kay, I know your most recent one with the hashtag, buy my damn book, y'all. And
buy my book, damn it.
Buy my book that you can have, buy my damn book, y'all, for next year.
Yeah.
You are redoing Coquina, which we now all know is a little fat, little tiny mollusk with the Easter colors on the inside. That you're redoing a cottage, and you were like, if you guys get me on this bestseller list, I'll show you some cottage porn. Talk about that. That is hilarious. And they can see it.
Yeah, when I first started writing mystery, I joined this amazing group of women called Sisters in Crime.
I love Sisters in Crime.
And they had a little booklet. It was back in the day, they would send you a booklet, and it was called Shameless Self-Promotion for Brazen Hussies.
I remember that.
You remember that?
You were Sisters in Crime too, Rochelle?
No, but you know what? I remember the
Shameless Self-Promotion for Brazen Hussies. And that kind of made me think to myself, you know what? If I don't promote me, who else will? And I am totally shameless. And I will say it, I am shameless. It is about, I believe I've written a good book. And the success of my next book depends on the success of this book. And so I will accost a innocent bystander in Target and say to them, don't you want to buy my book? So anyway, we're fixing up this beach rental. It's our third one on Tybee Island. And so people went nuts every time I showed a photo of what we were doing. And so I thought, how can I be shameless? And I started calling it cottage porn, which don't look at cottage porn because you'll get some shocking stuff you do not want to see.
Be careful what you Google.
Yeah, MKA cottage porn. There will be no nudity in that. There will just be old dead people's crap that I've spray painted or fixed up or whatever. So for me, it's organic. This is what I love to do. I love to fix up old houses. I love to go junking. There's an element of that in a lot of my books, and my readers seem to respond to that. And I just wish they responded in it as well to my books, because every time I show a picture of Coquina Cottage, it's like, gangbusters. And then I say,
you had Mark Childress and a whole bunch of people fighting about what color you should paint these beds. Right?
It was crazy. Who am I to question a gay man's taste in wall colors?
It almost came to blows. Like, people were like, no, you have to paint those beds red. No, they must be white. No, they must be navy blue. Like, it got heated up in there, y'all. I loved it.
It's better than politics. I will say that. It's safer than politics.
That's true. Rochelle, you too have had a very long-lived career, huge readership, very prolific writer. How do you, and especially when you were first starting out, how did you get your books into the hands of readers? What did you do?
Well, initially I didn't do much. And then I had the publicist at Kensington call me up and say, you must start going out to these conferences. You must do this, you must do that. And I said, I don't want to. She said, but you have to, because you know what? These people want to meet you. So then I started signing up for conferences. And then one time I gave my own retreat. I gave it in Orlando, Florida. And I invited writers that were from New York. I said, you guys come on down. And I wound up with like 150 people.
Wow.
I gave little gift bags to everyone. We had theme dinners. Like one night it was like island night, everybody dressed in their floral shirts, and we had rum punch and music and stuff like that. So that went over extremely well. And then, you know, I would still go to several conferences and do signings. And, but then, you know, the last, I think the last gatherings I went to was Barbara Vay's Reader Appreciation, which I truly love because as a writer, you're seated at the table with 7 other readers and you give them gifts for supporting you, because I always say, without them, we can just write and write and write. And it's like, who cares? Who knows? And, you know, and the thing is, I met a lot of people who, because initially when she starts the registration, my table will sell out in a day. And then I meet some of them I've never met before. And I give them books. I give them perfume. I give them chocolates. I give lots of little stuff. I mean, it comes out to be a lot of money, but it's worth it because they will read me. And then the next year they'll come back and say, I read that book. I bought 6 of your books and this and that. So you know what? It's almost like a snowball effect. And it's just great. And then a lot of times I just give away books because one publisher sends me 96 copies of author books. I had 2 storage units filled with books that cost me $500 a month, and I got to get rid of these books. So, you know, if I have a contest, here's a book, here's a book, here's a book.
Keep it cleaned out.
I had a bookstore where I was just selling them for half price. You give me the large priority box, cost $17. I would sell the books for $25, and that was it. And they would get 30, 40 books in the box.
And I tell you what, if you're a reader and you like a writer and you depend on them having a new book out every year or so, the best thing you can do is to tell people you should be reading this, you should be reading this. Word of mouth is just priceless.
Mm-hmm.
Carmen Slaughter, a wonderful literati human being that I adore, and also just a great hand seller for years, wants to say to you both, I've been reading Rochelle since the beginning of the Arabesque line. I've loved Mary Kay since every Crooked Nanny, and she just wants to thank you for all the years of being dedicated writers, because it's given her so much pleasure over the years. And Catherine Stillwell sort of dovetails with that. She's asking you, like, when you're this prolific, how do you make everything in every book so completely different? How do you come up with all these unique plots and characters? Rochelle, we'll start with you this time, and then we'll go to Mary Kay. And this will probably be our last question. We're running out of time. This has gone like that.
Well, you know, I usually start with an idea. I love to watch documentaries. I got an idea once from 60 Minutes, where this American woman had married a Swedish guy, and they were divorced and they had joint custody, and he took the son back to Sweden on a visitation, and this country couldn't do anything about it. And what she did was finally hire like a mercenary to go and snatch her boy.
Oh my God.
So that was a plot. That was a plot. So, you know, and the thing is, even if I write a series, I just don't want to, I don't want a boilerplate where you just take the characters and you plop them down. Or if I do a family, I will highlight maybe 1 or 2 characters and not tell too much. So in the next, if it's their book, then you really want to read about them. So, you know, it's sort of a thing that I've been doing for the last 30 years. So even if it's a series, I want the books to be standalones. And it's sometimes it's difficult, but most times I think I'm able to be successful with making them fresh.
So I think it helps too that these books are connected. So these are people who are living in the same world, and that world just gets more expansive to include all these individuals. I love a limited series where you meet somebody and maybe they're in the background and then they come to the foreground for the next book and you get to see some of your favorites come back. Rochelle, thank you so much for being here. I love
Thank
the
you
Beach
for
House.
having me.
Great thing. Mary Kay, if you want to answer that same question, how is this, like, you really have gone through some transformations in terms of genre, so I'm sure that has to help. Like, I think about, you're right, like Hissy Fit is very different from this, but so there's that. But how do you, like, I loved Letty. I love her. She is so Scarlet. I love that her name is secretly Scarlet, and I love that she's so determined, and I loved her relationship with Maya, and she feels wholly individual. Talk about that a little bit.
I think I have an endlessly curious mind. And so ideas, I think my brain is like a lint trap. And when I see that there's enough stuff stuck there, I kind of rub it between the palms of my hand and I look at it and I say, oh, look at that. Look what came out of that. And so with The Newcomer, my editor actually said, I want you to write a book called The Newcomer. And it's a fish out of water story. And I think you should do it at one of those vintage motels that you like. We had a boozy lunch in New York, and she said that to me. And as soon as she said that, sometimes I take her suggestions, sometimes I don't. But immediately I started thinking about a woman named Scarlet, and everyone calls her Letty. And she's embarrassed about her kind of trailer park backstory. Her mom was kind of a Rolling Stone. And I think if you're curious and you are competing with yourself, I'm not competing with other writers. I'm competing with me. Every time I want a new character, I want a fresh story. I want a setting that that my readers will want to, because I write beach books, and I am proud to write beach books. I want relatable characters. I want a setting where my readers want to go to, and I want my characters to have issues that my readers can believe in. And so every year it's a new challenge for me.
I loved having this time to talk with both of you. Rochelle, it was so nice to get to meet you all the way up in New York City, Long Island. And of course, I have seen Mary Kay once or twice before, since you live, like 2 miles from my house. But but I loved having the time to talk about this. I love these books. You can get these books through Little Shop of Stories, and you should absolutely do that. Thank you guys both.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next week, Nikki Salcedo will be up, and we have a trio of wonderful books. Annie and the Wolves is about a historian, a female historian who kind of gets obsessed with Annie Oakley, and there's a lot of history and some parallels for life. Darkly funny and great. The Kindest Lie by Nancy Johnson. So freaking good, beautiful.
I love Nancy Johnson.
I know. So have you read this one yet? So good. I would loan it to you, but no, you have to buy it. And then you can buy it.
There's no loaning.
That's right. This is mine. And whatever independent bookstore selling it, I know you'll get it from them. And then we have a debut. I love debuts. Ilona Bannister's When I Ran Away, which is it's a redemption story and stuff. These are 3 very fascinating authors. Nikki is going to do her usual fabulous job. You will not want to miss that on June 1st. Thank you both for being here. Thank all of you for coming.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.